successful you were. I'm 80. My brother's 83. You know what that was? We were born in Berlin in 1943. I just want you, Moshe, power to know what you're dealing with. That's what Rosh Hashanah says. Their statement of their ages, Paro did quick math and says that can't be. During those days, we were killing all the Jewish babies. Can't be. It's not true. He says, hey, we're living proof that whatever you were planning, you're a failure.
Grew up on his laps.
Yeah, we grew up on his lap, is right. So, done. Okay, next. We have the makos. So, let's go, we have 7 makos this week. We know that the makos were etched on the staff. We're going to talk about that stick in a moment. Maybe I'll talk about it now real quick, because it was something fascinating. In the Ocha Palos HaTorah, they want to know what this stick of Moshe was. So some people say it was sapphire, or this top was sapphire. But he brings down here from the Medrashim that the staff was made during Sheshes Yemei Bereshis, and the wood came from the Eitz HaChaim.
It was two matop, right? Aaron and Moshe.
Right. We're talking about Moshe's staff here. So he says that it came from the Eitz HaChaim. He brings down from the Medrash HaNe'elam Moshe Rabbeinu notal amateh me'etz ha'chaim shebegan Eden. Okay. Then, what was on the staff? So the staff had the names of the Avos, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, the Imahos, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, the Shvatim. Then it had the Tzach, Hadash, Ba'achav, the order of the 10 Makos. And then he says it had the Shem HaMeforish. And that's where Moshe got the Shem HaMeforish. Because, this is what he brings out from the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. The staff of Moshe was made during the 6 days of creation and given to Adam HaRishon as a gift. Adam gave it to Chanoch. Okay? Chanoch gave it to Noah, who brought it in with him into the table. Noah gave it to his son Shem. Shem gave it to Avram Avinu after Avram defeated the 4 kings against the 5 kings. Avram gave it to Yitzchak, Yitzchak gave it to Yaakov. Yaakov brought it down with him to Egypt and gave it as a gift to his son Yosef. Yosef kept it in the palace. And when he died, Paro kept it in a museum.
They couldn't take it out.
Palace.
It's like a fingerprint.
Not yet. Not yet. That's going to come in a moment. Moshe saw the staff in Paro's palace, and he saw the Shem HaMeforish. He really didn't know its power. The first time he used it was with the Egyptian, and the Egyptian dropped dead. As we mentioned last week, it was the first time he used it, and the last time he used it. Okay, but we didn't know where he knew it from. We thought his father taught it to him. But you know how many fathers teach their kids the Shem HaMeforish? At any rate, it says here that Yisro saw the staff in Paro's palace and really wanted it. And after Yisro saved baby Moshe with the fire and the coals and that whole story, Paro gave it to Yisro as a gift, and Yisro planted it in his garden. Then when he wanted to remove it, he couldn't remove it. It's like the Excalibur, the famous story with King Arthur.
Couldn't pull the
sword out. So Yisro gave a reward. Whoever pulls out the staff will get my daughter Tzipporah as a wife. Wow. Okay? Now, I assume that was a reward. It could have been the biggest curse in the world, but let's assume for a moment getting his daughter was a prize. Okay? So everybody tried. No one could do it. Until who came? Moshe. And Moshe, as you said, just
recognized the fingerprint.
Whatever it was, it just came right out. And with that staff, Moshe had the Shem HaMeforish, he had the Avos and the Imahos, and he had the order of the Makos. So that was Moshe's staff. Now, you would think that Moshe would have given the staff over to Yehoshua and would have continued on, because that was its history.
There's a problem there. he killed the Egyptian before he got the stick then.
Yeah, but he knew, he saw it in Paro's
He grew up in the
palace.
palace.
He grew up in the palace. He saw the name, he didn't know what it was. So it says over here that when Moshe died, Hashem's instructions were that Moshe went up the mountain with the staff. Hashem buried the staff with Moshe.
Correct. Yeah.
So it never went anywhere else. There is a footnote over here that says, in the Yalkut Shimoni from the Barbanel, he says that eventually the staff will go to the hands of Moshiach ben David. Now one of the signs that Moshiach ben David is who he is he'll be walking with a scepter, a staff. That will be Moshe's scepter, with these bits of information ingrained on it.
But Etz Chaim
I think
was
Moshe will wake up.
hidden from Adam Arishon, isn't it?
The Eitz HaChaim, he knew where it was. There was a guard in front of it. There was a sword and
After he ate from it.
after he
not
ate
before.
from the Eitz Hadas, the Eitz HaChaim was forbidden to him. But it was
So
there.
how did he get the stick?
No, it was made from the Eitz HaChaim by Hashem during the 6 days of creation.
Before Tzid.
Before
בין
Adam.
השלושות, yeah.
בין
פיאטון, פיאטון.
Right, and then Hashem gave it as a gift to Adam Harisha. And
Before it
Adam,
bear the fruits.
that's right, and Adam didn't give it to Cain or Hevel or anybody like that. He gave it to Chanoch. Chanoch was quite a
So
few
it wasn't the
generations
whole
later.
tree, it was just one branch.
Just one branch.
Yeah.
That was some stick.
Yeah.
Right? That was some stick.
Really old stick too.
Yeah, it was a
But-
really old stick. And when he walked into Paro, this stick, Paro recognized the stick,
Was the same Paro?
Yeah, depending on what it was, but Paro viewed the stick was, I ruled the stick, and Moshe says, and now the stick rules you.
I have a good question. When Moshe came out, whenever he was in Egypt, Moshe already had the power against the Mitzri when he killed him. He said, Shem
Which you saw
HaMevorach.
on the stick.
Oh, that's what he took it from?
That's what he took from it. It was on the stick. It was engraved on the stick.
Oh, so he knew it already. He knew how to
He
do
didn't know
all
its
of that.
power.
He didn't know his power. Wow.
He used it, and the Egyptian dropped dead. He never used it again, we said last
Ah.
week.
Wow.
He used it once in his life. We never find that he used it
He
again.
had the power to go in into spiritual, to see back and
He
front.
didn't use it against Korach. He didn't use it against Dosan Va'aviro.
Nothing.
Nothing. He never used it again. Because that caused him no end of grief.
But when
used
did
it
he learn
once.
this? He was learning this in the palace?
He saw it. He knew he was Jewish. His parents were giving him direction. But he
So
knew
why
it.
can't we assume that he just killed him regularly, like
We
person to
could, but he doesn't in Avira, when they accuse Moshe, are you going to kill us with
Like the
words,
same way.
like the same way?
You did.
He used kasher dibartu, like he uses they use the words in there. Okay,
God.
next, listen carefully. The Torah notes that during the Makos, Hashem. Now, okay, let's go back to the Makos. Each Mako was a groups of 3, 3, 3, and 3, 9, and then the last Mako. From each of the 3 groups, the first Mako, Hashem sent Moshe to warn Paro by the Nile, privately. The second Mako, the second, the 5th, the 8th, by the palace, publicly. The third Mako of each group, no warning. You had 2 warnings, the third came with no warning. There was no warning for Keening, there was no warning for Oro Dever. Shechin had no warning, and Machas Choshech had no warning. The first 3, the Torah says, give Paro a message, I am God. Paro says, great. Another God. Who cares? Which planet are you playing with today? The second 3 was, Ani Hashem Bekera for Oretz. I am God, and I'm here in Egypt. I'm local. It's a local phone call. Paro says, great, there are a lot of gods in Egypt, you're just one of the many. The third group, Moshe says to Paro, Ani Hashem Bekera for Oretz, Ein Od Miladi. There's nobody like me. So each of the 3 sets of Makos had a different message. Each had a warning private, a warning public, each without a warning. The Makos lasted approximately a week. Each Mako, the frogs, the lice, the wild animals, lasted about a week.
3 weeks warning.
And then there was 3 weeks.
Warning,
right.
and then the
Right.
Makkah
So
itself.
the Makkos were spread over almost a full year. Not exactly a full year, but almost a full year. Because the last few Makkos came together, Makkos Choshech and then Makkos Bechoros came right after. It was almost a full year. The Rambam notes, because it says that Hashem hardened Paro's heart. So the Rambam claims that, yes, it's true. Hashem took away from Paro free choice. Bechira, he didn't have anymore. Because of his past actions, Hashem punished him that he was now a pawn in the master plan. Famous Rambam. In the Rambam himself, I photocopied it here, in Hilchos Tshuva, the Rambam says that even though the Torah predicted that the Jews will be slaves in a foreign land, it never identified the land as Egypt. So Egypt volunteered for the job. That was why they were held responsible. No one appointed them as God's messenger. That's what the Rambam says. The Ramban and the Raiva disagree. They say Egypt had every right to volunteer. It was in the cards. They were going to be in Egypt. But the Hashem's rule was slavery. It never included torture, throwing children into the Nile River, and everything else that the Egyptians did. So the Egyptians got punished because they took their mandate and they enhanced it. They improved on the mandate. That was never their job. They never had the right to do that. So the Rambam says they shouldn't have volunteered at all. The Ramban says they had a right to volunteer, but they didn't have a right to increase the difficulty. The Rambam says Hashem took away the free will. The Sforno says no. The Makkos wore Paro down, so all Hashem did was give him the ability to withstand being worn down. But every decision was still free will. At any point, Makkah 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, Paro could have said goodbye. I let you go. The fact that he didn't made him culpable, made him responsible. According to the Rambam, the Makkos were a form of punishment. Mida keneged mida. You threw babies in the Nile turned to blood. You kept us up at night, they're frogs. We couldn't bathe properly, so we were infected with lice, you got lice. You made us take care of your animals against wild animals, you got wild animals. Everything was measure for measure. You didn't recognize Yosef and all the good he did for you to save you with food, the R.Brick took away all your food. You know, it was all back and forth. According to the Sforno, the Makkos were simply a form of Paro being broken down step by step that he should do teshuvah. That's all it was. It wasn't a punishment.
Yes.
It was just Hashem sometimes...
To make him accept Hashem.
That's right. I mean, sometimes a person is going through a challenge and they want to know, what did I do to deserve this? And you say, well, you know, I don't know what you did to do this, but get closer to Hashem and the challenge will go away. Maybe Hashem is sending you a message. Okay. According to both, the Makkos had a third purpose, and that was to strengthen Bnei Yisrael's belief in Hashem.
Oh, yeah.
Now, we're going to talk next week that it didn't work, right? Because 4/5 said to the opportunity to leave Egypt, 80% said, no thank you. We're very happy here. You know, I'm going to stay.
We already embedded your domination.
Right. So, whatever the Makkos, the 10 Makkos were there to punish the Egyptians, or to make them do tshuva, or to show the Jewish people that there is a God, and everything has a purpose, and Hashem is here to take you out, that won't work. Why it didn't work, next week we'll talk about it. There's a few theories that the Rishonim talk about. We'll talk about that. He brings down over here, from one of the Perushim, he says that, you know, we all assume the Jews had many challenges. They had to take care of their household, they had to make the bricks to build the cities, they had the slavery. He says, you know, Paro was living the life of luxury. So he brings down one of the Meforshim, very strange. He says, we all have our poisons. Paro's poison was, he wanted everybody to believe he was a god. So what did he do? In the morning he would go down to the Nile and he would take care of his bathroom needs in the Nile because in the morning. He says, that's great. But then he had to hold it in all day. And that wasn't always so easy. He says everybody had their poison. That means Moshe knew how to get under Paro's skin and to upset him, and then all of a sudden Paro had to, couldn't be this God anymore. He says, everybody has their poison in their own way.
Right.
The next thing that we talk about a little bit, but let's go through this, and then there's one more thing I want to share with you. The Rambam writes in the Sefer Hamado, which is one of the first books of the Sefer of the Rambam, he says, all sorcery is fake.
Right.
That's the Rambam sheet.
Some say it's real.
What's that? The Rambam says the Egyptian sorcery was all sleight of hand.
Las
It was all
Vegas
fake.
style.
Las Vegas style. And there's some real, you see a good
Some-
magician,
exactly.
man, you would think
Yes.
it's magic.
Really,
They're really that good. Some of these card tricks, it's amazing. They're some really good. The Ramban and the Vilna Gaon, they disagree, and they argue, and they say that sorcery is real.
Right.
Okay?
It's real.
It's a dark magic, which was a balance to, you had Nevuah, you had dark magic. You had forces of good, Kabbalah, and you had forces of evil, Shadim, etc. So the Rambam says it was all fake. The Rambam is always a shita. The Rambam's of the opinion that there's no such thing as an ayin hara. If you believe in it,
Right.
you create it, but don't believe in
Right.
it. But the Vilna Gaon and the Ramban say, no, it was real. These magicians of Paro really did all these crazy things. Black magic is real. I have people today that, they sell their house and, they're buying an inferior home, and I ask them why they're selling their house, and he says, well, my husband cheated on me with some gypsy, and the house is cursed. It's just, ever since that day, there's bad karma, she takes my hair and she burns it, all these things. These gypsies, these Romanian gypsies,
Even Spanish people, even
they
South
do these
America,
crazy things,
they're
right?
doing crazy things. They use the black magic. It's very well known, even here in
All the
And-
Creole, not only, all the Creole, like New Orleans and all that.
Oh,
I know that, right?
All
Correct.
those witches, but real witches, they say. I mean, I'm just telling you what
Rabbi, I've
people
been
say.
there. I've been in New Orleans. I felt it in the air.
Okay, so you see here,
Scary.
so the Rambam says it's all fake.
Scary.
But the Ramban says, and the Vilna Gaon says, it's real. And you have people who are victims of these situations.
Sure.
Now, sometimes, this lady was going to spend $1,800 to some Baal who was going to bless us. I wasn't really thrilled with that when she told me that, because, but there's something to it. There are some people, you all know stories of people who have these type of curses. So that's something unusual. Next, one or two more things. It says here, we know that Moshe did not do the first 3 makos. Aaron did it. Everybody says,
Right.
Hakarat
Hakarat
Tov, one of the Meforshim I saw, very interesting, he says, I don't get it. The Nile never saved Moshe. The basket maybe saved Moshe. Moshe was in a basket. But the Nile never really saved him. And the sand never really protected him, because the body he hid in the sand was discovered the next day. Dosan and Aviram, Moshe had to run for his life. They found the body. So the sand bought him one day. That's not saving your life. So he says something different. He says Moshe could only bring a makkah on something he also experienced and suffered. For example, in the Nile, they threw the Jewish babies. Moshe never had any of his babies thrown in the Nile, so he couldn't hit the Nile. Tzifardea, the Egyptian taskmasters kept the Jews up at night. Moshe was not a slave. He was never kept up at night. Lice, they were not permitted to bathe, so they had lice. Moshe bathed. He lived in Midian. These things never affected him. So he couldn't punish the Nile, or he couldn't hit the frogs, or he couldn't bring the lice, because he wasn't that bothered. Orev, he protected Yisro's sheep. He had to deal with wild animals. Dever, pestilence, Yisro's sheep could have gotten sick. Shechin, he suffered the insults of the Khartoumim. Borod, when he left Paro's palace, they pelted him with rocks. He never felt that. Arbe, he suffered because Paro didn't remember Yosef saving them from hunger. Choshech, he felt the darkness and despair of the Jewish people. So the other Makos, Moshe experienced. He lived it. He felt it. he could identify with it, so he could bring those lacos. But the first three he could not. So that's a reversal of what we have. Then the last thing I want to share with you is from the Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, Chief Rabbi of England. Now I didn't have this before. These last year I've been getting his sheets.
He passed away.
He's passed away. These are his sheets that were from his, I guess he wrote notes or whatever it is. Hi. So it's just interesting because he has sometimes things, he says, we started off with this in the beginning of this week's Parsha. Moshe says to Hashem, I quit. From the moment I came to Paro, it was disastrous. Not only did I not make things better, they didn't even stay the same. They got worse. So he brings down a letter that Rav Hutner wrote. And Rav Hutner wrote, leadership, even in the highest of positions, is often marked with failure. Rav Hutner wrote, greatness cannot be achieved without failure. There are heights you cannot climb without first having fallen. He wrote this to a student of his who was experiencing a rough time. Then he brings down from Calvin Coolidge, who was the President of the United States 200 years ago, 150 years ago. Listen to this. Nothing in this world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. I have seen many talented people unsuccessful. Genius will not. I have seen many smart people that cannot make a nickel to work on. Education will not. The world is full of very educated derelicts, losers. Persistence and determination alone is what makes a person successful. The person who gives up fails. The person who, in spite of all the setbacks, like, it says in Shlomo Melech wrote, the tzaddik will fall 7 times.
Right.
What do?
Gets up.
Pick yourself up, brush yourself up,
Forward.
and you keep going. You know who loses? The guy who stays down.
Yeah, doesn't get up.
So he says, Hashem said to Moshe, you think you're a loser? You think you're a failure? Don't judge by today alone. Persistence.
Right.
Go back to Paro. Try again.
Rabbi, persistent beat resistant.
Right. Persistent will beat the resistant. You just keep going.
Exactly.
Don't give up. There used to be this Guy Lombardi was a football coach.
Yes.
And they once said to him, you lost the football game. What happened? He says, we didn't lose the game, we just ran out of time. The game was over. Had we had another 10 minutes, we would have won. That's what he said. We didn't lose the game, we just ran out of time. The game, the football game is an hour, 4 quarters.
So how do you buy time?
That's what he had to do.
Ask him, how do you do it?
But that was his answer. We didn't lose, we just ran out of time. That's all.